Okay, hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm still getting used to this microphone. Okay, so in today's video we're going to have a go at doing a tutorial on hands similar to the way we did it on feet. So I'm going to break down the basic shapes of the hand, then we'll block out a hand in a simple pose, and we'll do a little bit of sculpting on it, and I may go to a time lapse at the end. I'm not really sure, I haven't decided yet. So let us break down some shapes. So yeah, let's break down the hand. We'll do these two here. These are the most likely, these are the most clear shapes of the hand that we'll probably get to see. So let's add a layer. We'll make it red, and we're gonna just start breaking down the shape of the hands. So okay, let's have a look at this real quick. So I would say that's an important shape there. Like the hand is arched here. I think it's to do with dexterity. So how much we can move our hands around these edges here. So underneath on itself. So this actually, let's draw it out. So that's the shape of the hand. It actually, and this is your pinky, and this is your index. This actually rolls down, and this hand's got flexibility this way as well. So yeah, a box there, I would say that for the main part of the hand. Here is a triangle here, but that's not just a triangle. And then we've got our basic phalanges, and I think the thumb is the same as the big toe. There's only two joints in that. So the fingers appear about the same size. The end one's a tiny bit smaller. I don't have any skeletal images to show you here, but like if you imagine this is the index finger, we've got like one bone on the inside. This is our second bone here, and the final bone is just like a little pointy thing, and around it is a lot of there's the fingernails, the fat of the finger, first knuckle. There's a lot of nerve endings and just padding and things like that. It's all designed to help you feel, and it's designed to, this padding here and all this gripping here, and also underneath here there's grips underneath the hand. That's all designed for gripping. So there's like fatty muscly pads underneath as well. But we're not too worried about that. We want basic shapes. So if we imagine that this in red is the shape of the bulk of the hand, this here is a huge pad of muscle. Let's change colour for that. This right here is a huge pad of muscle, so it's not strictly a triangle shape. I would argue that maybe it's a bit more of a cone. You can see it here. So if we draw it out here, if this is where our first joint is, this goes all the way around underneath and around the front. So you can see why I'm trying to get you to understand it as a cone shape, right? Can you see what I mean? I mean, it looks a bit like a beehive right now, but you get what I'm saying, right? So this is a cone shape that pops off the hand, and then we've obviously got the rest of the phalanges like normal. So again, it's similar in a lot of ways, the hand to the foot. So if you look at, let's go for a different color again. Let's go green. So if you look at how the hand print, the actual palm of the hand is, it's very similar to our footprint, except for, with the exception of this here, and the fact that we don't have a heel. So again, in simple terms, let's try and draw out a hand so that we can simple terms it. So let's draw a hand in, I don't know, just a relaxed pose. So I would say, let's have a look at my hand. That comes around there a little. There's our box, there's our main box of a hand. Then we can go blue and we'll draw our sort of cone shape here. It might go around there actually. We'll go back to red and we'll draw in the rest of the phalanges. This might be a bit high here. Because from where I'm looking at it, you're probably seeing it from a different angle, but I can't see this pinky here. I can just see the bottom of it here. So let's add a green for the pinky, for the phalanges. So I might say, again, drawing out the shapes. So my hand is kind of looking away from me. Middle finger's slightly longer, and that pops in behind there. There's the last finger, and our pinky's disappeared right behind there. And this finger, boom, 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 comes kind of around here. So let's shade this in a little. So this is the underside. And this is the middle finger. So yeah, you can see where I'm going with this. So you're basically breaking it down into simple shapes again, right? So you're ideally simple as you can get these shapes. So that shape there, obviously, I think comes along there a bit more. This is really rough, so don't, again, this isn't a perfect representation of a hand by any stretch of the imagination, but you get the idea. You can see what we're trying to do here. We're trying to break it down into shapes that we can easily manage. So with that said, I think we know enough about the shape of the hand, or the shapes that go into the hand, that we could probably start blocking this out. I think realistically the point of all of this is to understand the way it works in some respects, and really the biggest takeaway would probably be understand the basic forms and shapes that go into it. There's more to it, obviously. Like we've got tendons all through here, so there's like a sock almost that sits around there, and a tendon runs through each of these and down the back of the hand to like a larger kind of sock area, if you want, down here. And it's similar on the underside. There's muscle in there that will help control that. So these are all like to help you pull back out that way. These tendons here will tighten up and pull your finger out straight, and the muscles on the inside will close your fist in. So there's a lot more to it than that, and structurally as well. Under here, there's a bunch of little bones. I forget, again, I got this mixed up before. I think it's metatarsals or metacarpals. I can't remember. But yeah, this gives you the spread that way. These actually have a little bit of movement in here. So there'll be like a set of bones in here. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Then you've got your knuckles. and the rest of your phalanges will come through here, right? So there's understanding the basics of it, and then there's, you know, there are people that probably explain this a lot better than I do. There's probably a lot more to it, but like I said, the basic point of all of this is understand a little bit about how it works and understand the shapes that go into creating it. So like I said, these are probably going to be all cylinders. This is going to be a square that we're going to cut into shapes. This is going to be a sort of a triangle wedge sort of slash honey beehive cone type thing, and then again you'll need to remember all of this lot in here where the padding is. This is going to be muscle here. There's going to be padding underneath all of these, because this is all for grip, and your nerves are all in there as well. So, you know, one of the points of about this, like I said, is to understand the shapes. So I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there for now on this. I'll restart that camera and we'll go over into Nomad and we'll start blocking out a hand. And I'll show you a couple of other alternatives as well. Inside of Nomad there is a pre-made one that's like set up with hierarchy and everything, but for the purposes of this I think we'll block one out. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to switch that off and we'll be back momentarily. Okay, we're back. So what we're going to do in this section, excuse me, we are going to block out a basic foot. I'm going to have another couple of sips of my coffee, because otherwise it'll go cold and I'll have to heat it up, which I'll probably end up doing in a bit anyway. Okay, so blocking out the foot. Oh, sorry, the foot. My mistake. Blocking out the hand. Okay, so first things first. We need to delete this. We don't need it. So the first thing I want to do is show you how you can quickly get a hand inside of Nomad. So there's this little thing, if you go in here or under the file save thing, in the top left corner there's a little thing called preset, and you can grab some pretty cool stuff in here. Stylized humans, female and male, realistic skull. So what we'll quickly do, just to I hope I'm not wrong about this, I'm pretty sure that there is that this is broken down into parts so that we can move it around, but I might be wrong. It isn't as okay. So you can, let's just do it quickly. You can come in and break this down into smaller shapes. Right? And it wouldn't take very long. Oh, okay, we didn't and then what you'd end up doing is in the hierarchy here, let's find the finger part that we need, so we'll hold that open. So that's the top finger. Let's label that index 1 or something. And then what we can do is we can grab these, and the hierarchy system inside of Nomad is actually great. And if you put these underneath each other, what you end up with is a posable hand, or say a posable digit even, that's it's got all of the fingers attached to it. So you can now repose this hand however you see fit. This is essentially what we're going to be doing, but we're gonna put a bit more time and effort into actually creating a hand sculpt. I want to show you that the shapes that go into this can be broken down pretty, but there you go. I mean, there's one way you could do it, okay, and it's quick, like I said. So there's your index finger. Let's do the thumb real quick as well. So let's call this thumb 1. Let me just grab that, drop that under thumb 1, and you know, we've got another posable digit. I would set the pivot points on this probably a bit more selectively, but you get the idea. And there we go. So we're not going to actually use this. We're going to delete all of these that we've just made. And we're going to do it using shapes, so it'll probably end up looking a bit more like a stylized hand, but yeah. Okay, so let's turn on our hand reference. There we go. Let's give ourselves a little bit more geometry to work with. And we're going to set up our so let's validate that, and we'll scale that to about the size of our hand. Let's check we're in orthographic. So orthographic is just going to make things a little bit easier because you're not worried about whether something is in the distance is scaled down, right? So if we turn this like this and we really push the perspective, you can see how the stuff in the background gets smaller, and it's really going to be difficult to get a sense of it's going to be really difficult to get a sense of size if everything's like you know, in the distance is scaled down and stuff like that. So I think what we're going to do here, let's check the side to make sure we haven't got a massive chonky hand, because we don't want that. Your hands aren't really that thick. I mean, it depends on, my granddad used to have huge hands, so, but I think as a general rule, I don't think your hands are that thick. Okay, so now we've got the rough shape of that. Let's trim this up. We're just going to chop into it and start taking out some of the sections we don't need. So we're going to add this section here later. I can actually turn off. There we go. Okay, and we're going to come down and across here because we're going to add this whole shape in later. And we're going to come up and over the hand to create that shape of the knuckles there. Then I think we will add a, see what shapes we got. Let's add a cylinder. We'll add some more divisions. Let's start moving this into position. So we know, like I said, we know it's a cone, but if we look at this lower image here, it kind of rolls around to the front a little. So the hand, if you look at my hand relaxed, the thumb comes round and underneath. So I think what we'll do, we'll scale that down. We'll rotate this up a little. There's our first kind of shape. It's gonna like, So we're going to mess around with these a little bit. I think we'll validate that. And let's start sculpting this a little bit just to fill these gaps and make sure, let's sculpt what we've got so that we've got this shape. So let's do that. I think I'm going to turn off symmetry as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try and make sure that we've filled all of the gaps we need. So here as well, if you look at this, this comes around into the hand a little here. So we're going to fill some of that space and bring this over. Already see it kind of making roughly the shape that we need anyway. So let's okay, so now we need to try and fill some of this gap here. And when we sculpt this, like this small portion here, which is all part of it, we'll sculpt that in together. Let's cut that down a little tiny piece. We could probably bring some of this back up, because again, if you see the right side of this, it's all we can probably arch some of this down in a minute and create that shape that we were talking about earlier. But I think for now, that's a good enough rough shape. Shush, shush, Flo, go and get in your bed. Alright, 1 second, guys. Hey. Say hello to the camera. Alright, that's enough. Anyway, trying to record a tutorial here, bro. Sit down. Trying to help people. I'm just yapping away in the background, bro. I love you, but shut the hell up. Okay, so yeah, we're basically there with our base hand shape. I think just quickly actually, we're going to create that curve to the this curve to the wrist. Sorry, so I need to figure out which. So it'll be Y. Okay. So I'm going to try. So just ever so slightly, just to give it that sort of dropped off edge that we were talking about, and it'll make the hand feel just a little bit more natural when we get to that. Okay, so let's start popping in some, let's label these quickly first actually. Let's call this palm, or let's just call this hand. We'll call this thumb pad, I don't know, we'll just call this thumb pad for now. Okay, so let's start adding in some phalanges. We're just going to use cylinders for this for now. So again, let's give ourselves a bit more geometry to work with. And we'll just place this up here on the index finger. So there's like, I'm probably just going to duplicate this. You could do what we did with the finger, the hand that we chopped up, that we imported. You could do that. But I think this way, if we actually look at the pivot, we can arrange this actually so that the pivot is, let's have a look, see what that's done. Okay, we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep doing it this way. We'll move the pivot in a little while. So, we want to make sure the gap's filled. I'm going to come to about halfway between the knuckles, between the knuckle on the hand, and we're just going to duplicate this actually. Let's validate it, and we're going to clone it, move it straight up the hand, and if you see here, it's gone past the kind of point of the middle finger of the final knuckle, which is about there. Duplicate this last one. And I would say that's kind of good for the middle, for the main finger. So what we'll do, we'll add this hierarchy together, and that's, we've got our now posable finger. Actually no, what we'll do is we'll join them and we'll duplicate those over and we'll separate them again in a minute. So we'll clone that. We'll move this little guy over. Scale it up a tiny bit because our fingers aren't all the same size either. Middle finger's the largest, followed by this one. This one's ever so slightly smaller than the index, and then there's the pinky. So let's just keep cloning these and moving them into position. We'll clone that. Okay, I actually think that that's not too bad. So let's quickly do a couple of these fingers and we'll separate them out and label them. So there's a separate button here, which will put them into a group. We'll call that index 1. I'm not going to label all of the fingers because index 1 is enough for me to know that I'm working on the index finger. So again here underneath the delete button, there's the separate. We'll put it into groups. We'll call this mid 1. And the same again, we'll keep going through. We will actually, before we separate that, we will create the thumb because I forgot about that. We can also delete this top one. When we separate it out, we'll measure this out to the end of this one and we'll separate it out when we come to it. So I would say about there, and we'll separate this. We'll delete our thumb that we don't need, our thumb bit that we don't need. And then I think we'll start scaling these up a little to fill the thumb out a bit better. So the thumb's a bit chonkier than the other other phalanges. Okay, so thumb 1. Separate that, we'll call this ring 1 because it's your ring finger. I'll pop these in as a hierarchy, so remembering that the root is the top of the hierarchy, and as you move down, you'll have them set up like that, so that, like I said, basically you can move this one and it'll move the entire finger. So final finger, let's do pinky. Pinky 1. Oh, okay, I'm gonna separate those. I mean, I suppose you could, I just realised you could probably label this before you separate it and it will give them 1, 2, 3s, but it doesn't really matter. So we'll have the thumb pad, we'll have that. Let's merge those so that that's one piece, because we want it to be simple as possible. Don't want too much geometry right now. So that's now the hand, yeah. So we can now drag our index finger in mid. Now when you're adding these to the palm, you don't want these underneath each other because then it will go to the end of the index finger. So you want all of them on this same line here, so that they're all in order and they're all moved by just the hand. Okay, so we'll have the pinky up there, and what we'll do is we'll put the thumb at the very top between the index and the hand. We can delete these now because we don't need them. And what we have essentially is a hand that's been kind of posed. Let's sort this thumb out a little because we didn't do that. So the hand overall feels a little chonky, but we'll fix that in a little while. So overall, it's not brilliant, but it's enough to make any changes we need when we get to the sculpting part. So it isn't brilliant, I'll give you that, but we can from here make any pose on the hand we want. So let's quickly do a quick pose just to show you. Boom. So is it perfect? Probably not. Is it enough to give you a general idea of what you want to make and start sculpting onto it? 100%. Let's go for some anime fingers. So maybe merging this might have been a little I might have been a little boisterous with the merging of that up there, because I kind of want some flexibility in this part of the hand, because I feel like I want this over here somewhere. But again, it's nothing major that we can't sort out in the sculpt, right? So let's drag some of this over just to show you. We're just doing this quickly to show you. We're going to sculpt an open hand, but I'm just doing this to kind of show you what you can do if you're you know, so inclined, let's say. And there we have it. Just a very rough, quick hand, made with just basic shapes, squares and a cylinder. Squares and cylinders is what we literally use to make this, and it's enough to start sculpting. One thing I will say is if I'm going to do a closed fist, I probably wouldn't do all of these individual fingers. I would do the thumb, and then I would add a block for the kind of, let's add some mesh to that. So then I would do a block for the kind of overall shape of the fingers that I want to sculpt, right? So I might do something like this. Just throw a block in there. Gives me an idea of where all of the, because the thing with blocking out is you're looking to fill space, right? So that you can sculpt into that space. And if we look at what we've done here with just that square, what we've done is we've filled in this whole section here. This is all filled in, right? So we can sculpt that now. We've got a thumb on top of it like this. That's now sculptable. I might bring this over a bit more. Give a bit more space there. But you can see what I'm talking about, right? We've created the shape. This needs to come down this way a little more because, like I said, it's got to follow that shape of the hand. So what I might do is put that there, validate that, and create this sort of like knuckle area, or the part that follows the knuckle. Awesome. So that's just died. But I mean, we'll wrap it up here. We'll go back to where we were. So we've got an open hand to sculpt. And we'll save this, and then we'll just put another battery in there, and we'll get going again. So let's save this as and tutorial. Honestly thought I'd have more time. Oh, it's been 26 minutes. I just lost track of time. Okay, and I think we're good to go. We'll set this back up, and then we're going to switch off the camera and charge up some of our equipment. So yeah, like and subscribe so I can buy better equipment. It was cringy to say, but I need you guys. Alright, let's save this. Like and subscribe so I can buy a 3D printer, guys. I want to make these things into actual sculpts. So enough about that. We'll shut this off and I'll go and charge up my equipment, and I'll be back as soon as possible. So I'll catch you in a minute, guys. Okay, so this is going to be the first rough sculpting part. I kind of liked the anime fingers. Hold on. Okay, right, sorry about that. The camera died on the battery died on the camera. So as I was saying, I kind of like, I want to do the cross, the anime type fingers, because it'll put us in a good position to quickly show you how I might sculpt it into a fist when we get through this. So let's have a look. That's gonna come way more across there. Those are actually going to be rotated inways a lot more as well. So let's start moving this into more of a position that we'll be able to do these anime fingers like. do it, we'll put that back out and we'll move this back in. I just need there to be contact there, like some contact there. So thinking ahead, what I'm doing is I'm leaving this small gap here so that I can sculpt the thumb individually, and what I can do later is mask it off and move it into position. So I think what we'll do, I want to close this gap a little more as well. So I think what we'll do here, I'm just trying to fill some of this gap. I don't like I just want to close that gap a little, and we'll do the same on the inside here. And we'll tuck that in a tiny bit, and then we'll rotate that in as well. So this is mostly because I want to close this gap here. Right? I don't suppose it's as bad as all that. But we're gonna do it the easy way. So yeah, I want to close that gap there a little to make it feel more like a closed fist on these sections. I've left a gap here so that we can merge this without it becoming an issue. Now the last thing I want to check, because remember I said our hand goes over like this, I want to make sure that our fingers are all following that to a sort of a degree anyway. Separate that a little. Okay, I think what we'll do is merge all of this now and start sculpting on it. I think what we'll do first is we'll push this pose a little more, so we'll have them fingers bent back a little. Just to push it a bit, you know, like, because I don't want to just make it, you know, boring. You know, like if I was doing this for a client or anyone like that, I'd expect feedback a bit more like this. So yeah, that feels a little more. Might be a bit too much, but you know, I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and merge all of that. So what I'll probably do, if we've got time and I decide to do a sculpt of a fist from here, what we'll probably do is just cut all of this off and add a block. So let's go ahead and merge all of that. Let's give it a reasonable amount of mesh, because again, like, look, if we merge this super low, we're gonna get loads of like, that's not too bad. I think we want to give it a bit more mesh than that. So let's undo that. Just give it, let's go to maybe 100. And that just gives us that little bit more mesh to work with, you know, like, so now we're not, you know, just going to destroy the mesh with one stroke on the smooth tool or something, right? Okay, so let's turn that off. And let's just start smoothing this out and making it feel a little bit more like a hand. So there's a few issues on here. For example, there's a bone and some tendons that run up here that are going to connect this to here a bit more. There's some gaps here that I don't think that we would be seeing. But overall, I don't think this is a bad start. There's definitely some padding missing from here. EK remote low. It's plugged in, bro. What are you talking about? Yeah, so I think this wouldn't be as flat as this. This would probably not be over as far, but we can work on that in a little while too. I mean, it is kind of over quite far. Now in here, so let's do the hide tool, hide some of that. Oh. Do you know what might be better? If we slice our way through it rather than, so we want that thumb gone basically. Yeah, okay. So what I was using there, this is called the hide tool. So you can select either faces to get rid of, or you can select a chunk to remove. It's really handy for soloing parts of the model that might be on the same layer, or you know, just generally getting something out of the way that's you know, you've already spent time sculpting it. Let's say you've already spent time sculpting the thumb. You didn't want to damage it or anything like that. You could literally just switch it off. Switch the thumb off. So here I'm thinking this is kind of chunked out a bit much, so what we'd actually see would be like this part of the hand here with the thumb curling around underneath it. So what we'll do, we'll start chopping that, we'll start chopping into this, just trying to make it look a bit more like it's you know, tucked around underneath. So I mean, it's kind of working. We might need to check what's that thumb's doing now. No, that looks kind of good. I mean, yeah. So the thumb's kind of tucked around underneath. Our hand kind of comes up here like that. I think this needs to be chunked out a little here. But again, like, guys, you can see what I'm doing. I'm literally making the pose with my own hand and just seeing where I'm falling short on the model, right? So we're just going to add some details in so we know where we're going, so you can see the tendons running through. Sorry, these are bones and tendons and stuff. So that will be, this will be tendons running across the top of bones, basically. So at this point, we are literally just looking, like, landmarking it a little bit, right? So the outside of this is still really square. This might be a bit wide here. So we're essentially just landmarking it, smoothing out some of these shapes to get an idea of the mass, where that mass is, and is it behaving the way we'd expect it. So I think, to be quite honest, this needs to be puffed out a little more. And I feel like this section here, this little chunk, is annoying me. I want that kind of gone. Because if you look, it kind of like your hand, where your knuckles are tight here and where you're crushing your hand up, this bulges out a little more here. So what we're going to do, we're going to chop into some of that and try and get the rough shape of it to make it so that it's slightly more bulbous here. Because again, we're using our own hand as a kind of shape, and if we make a fist, we can see that that hand digs in there. This could probably do with being a bit lower, but it is what it is. I think the palm's slightly long, but it is what it is, guys. And then we'll start moving this bottom shape out a little more. And you can see where it's like, from the back it doesn't look too bad. It feels a little long. Let's try, see if we can shorten that up just a tiny bit. So the hand was feeling a little long. This isn't too bad so far. I would say that this here is probably a little deep, so we could bring that down even more. Let's continue to smooth this out a little, fill in any of the gaps that we're missing, because I know that there's going to be gaps around here that need filling in and stuff like that. So let's get this roughly smoothed in. We're at 13 minutes. I've got to remember that we only have like sort of 25 minutes ish of recording time in one sitting, so I need to get a better camera really. Like and subscribe so I can buy a better camera, guys. Again here, this is a bit deep, so we'll push that in a tiny bit. Same here. So here's where it's going to start getting a little bit trickier. We don't want to like just completely ignore the shapes that we're supposed to be building, because like if you just keep smoothing, you flatten everything out, and that might be fine, but it's not what we're going for. Okay, so I think what we'll do here now is we'll start sculpting up. So look at this. So here, for example, I do feel like the whole knuckle and the whole finger is a little bit too far forward. So we'll start smoothing that down. And I think we need to fill out some of this gap here because it really does feel a bit... Actually, if we start moving this into position now, we'll have an easier time with it later. So what I'm doing at the moment is just trying to fill some of the gaps that exist, and just flesh it out a little more to be the type of things I expect to see. So what we're not seeing, for example, is width on the knuckles in some of these joints here. So here, for example, and here, for example. And I think we can probably just chop into there so we don't lose that shape. So I think one of the problems here on this outside here is that it just feels too round and it goes in here, and actually the finger's popping out here. So I think what we'll do is we'll fill some of this gap. There we go. Just doesn't feel like it's going up into a point on the end of the knuckle. I think we can cut in there a tiny bit too, just to bring that inside of the hand down a little bit. That feels a little better. So it's just, I'm essentially just observing the sculpture that I'm making at the moment for the shapes, the large shapes, and where the mass is gonna, is the mass in the right place and that type of stuff. That's what I'm looking for. I feel like that is not far off. So we've actually filled in some areas, which is kind of needed. I feel like this is either too high or this knuckle's too low. So let's firstly add some depth to this knuckle to see if it makes this look any better. It does a little. I think some of that is down to this finger shape here, that like a knuckle comes in and dips down. Sorry, the bone comes in and dips down away from the knuckle, right? And I feel like we've got no mass here, which is really throwing the shape of this knuckle off. Let's add some mass in there. Maybe I'll run the crease tool through here to separate that a little more in a minute. But I think it's, I kind of know what it is. It's in here, these areas in here as well. It's making the hand feel thin in places where I don't think it should be. So we see how that's smoothing that out, it's thinned that knuckle again. So we'll, come on, select, there we go. So I think what we'll do, we'll come in here, we'll carefully grab these inner bits and thicken that knuckle out a tiny bit. So we're still working with a very low resolution for the sculpt at the moment, because again it's just about filling out the gaps, making sure that the mass is correct, that you're not, you know, like here for example, I feel like now these look too thin. We'll probably have to mask that off in a minute and do that, but you know, you want to make sure that what you're working to, again, it's the same story as always. If you are building a house and the foundations are terrible, you're going to end up with a terrible house. It might look pretty, but it's going to be a pain to build. And you know, need to find a builder with some serious patience, basically, to work on dodgy foundations, or they just won't do it. So same again here. Look, this is a bit thin on the outside, on the inside. And again, guys, this doesn't have to be anything special at the moment. Like, you're literally just going for the base. Like, the simplest form of this that you could possibly find or make is what we're trying to achieve at the moment, because we don't want to waste time adding detail. Like, you know, fingerprints. We're not going to do that, by the way. You don't want to waste time adding detail that you're not going to see, like fingernails. Sorry, that you'll probably have to change. So like you could sculpt a fingernail on this. You could do that if you want, but the chances are you'll have to change it. So technically, well, it's not technically, it is a waste of time. So until you're happy with the base, there's no point in doing anything else. So here, for example, that knuckle is now way too far over and it makes it look weird. That's also spun this knuckle a little bit, so I think what we can do, grab the move tool and carefully we'll move some of this over. And we'll do the same with that, I think. That feels a little better. I feel like there's a little thin, like there's not enough, there's no mass here. And the same probably under here. Give that a little smooth. And we are not too far off. Again, guys, a lot of this is going to be working up the general shapes, you know, making sure that you're happy with the foundations of the sculpt that you're laying down. So let's just quickly have this knuckle in here before we go and reset the camera, because it's showing 22 minutes there, which means that in about 4 minutes that's probably going to shut down. So just quickly, when it comes to the shape of the fingers and the tips of the fingers, smooth out one side, like the underside, and you can see it's already pushing that sort of shape into the thumb there that we're looking for. And then I think what we'll do, before we quickly cut this off, or the camera cuts us off, so we'll start bringing that over a tiny bit. And we'll fill this gap up here a tiny bit more, because again, like we've pushed over a lot of the mass to the inside of the hand here. So this has pushed all this is pushed over, which has squeezed all of this fat here across down here. And I think, you know what, let's smooth that thumb out a tiny bit more. Oh, and then I think we're pretty much good to go. And then we'll start working on the actual sculpt of this thing, I think, because, you know, this is only supposed to be a basic tutorial, guys. I'm not going for like world-class sculpting on this thing. I don't think that's too bad right now. So I think what we'll do, we'll leave it there, and then we'll come in and we'll start sculpting up some of this hand a bit more. Maybe work on these fingers a little, maybe fill out some of this gap here, because it all feels a bit like, if you look here, for example, there's creases in there. So I think what we'll do, we'll leave that there, we'll come back to it, we'll get another video going on there. Okay, be back 1 minute, guys. Okay, right, we're back again. So yeah, had a quick delivery while we got off camera there. Got my new glove. Thank you very much to my girlfriend for buying it for me. I appreciate you. Okay, so let's get on with this. So one thing I did notice while I was looking at this was that this isn't quite making the shape I want. These feel too high, or this feels too low. So what we're going to do first of all is see if it's anything to do with these outside, these yeah, these outside fingers. So we're going to make sure that we've got everything we need selected, or masked off, I should say. I think that'll do. We probably don't need this much selected around here, because I kind of like the shape that the hand's making. So we'll flip the mask. So yeah, we'll flip the mask and we'll go ahead and sort of bring this down a little so that it matches a little bit better. The this arcs that we're going for. I feel like this finger needs to probably come up some more as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I want to encompass the knuckle into it as well, because the things that's throwing me off are the shape that the knuckles are making here. So they should be doing this, and they weren't. They were doing this. So that, I think, should be a little better. We'll put some smoothing out here to do, but yeah. Okay, so moving forward, we're gonna, I suppose, sculpt this up into a more believable hand, I guess. Yeah, so let's just start doing that then. Let's add the knuckles. So let's go ahead and raise up the resolution on this mesh a tiny bit. So we're going to do it with dynamic topology, because I don't want to just throw topology at it. So let's go ahead and sculpt up this main finger. I feel like maybe we'd have a little bit more there. Probably up a little bit more under here. So I apologise if you can hear the noise from outside. I do live on a main road, so you know, it's just one of those things, guys. So what we want to do is we want to go for this type of like rounded shape here on the fingers, right? So we'll smooth this out. I may elongate this fingertip a tiny bit, but we want that kind of smooth transition across there. I mean, that's not too bad. It's a bit square here. So that's not bad. So we've got that kind of rounded fingertip. I might just drag this up a tiny bit more, just to create that nail section that we're going to be masking off in a little while. Oh. I keep forgetting that I've got this thing. I can just smooth it out. So I keep forgetting I've set up hotkeys, and I keep going back to the tablet and getting used to using my fingers for certain things. So every now and then you'll see me like double tap on the screen. But what I've done is I've set up one of the hotkeys as my smooth button, but it's not doing it. There we go. So yeah, one of the hotkeys has been set up as my sort of smooth button, so that I don't have to keep going over there and you know, reselecting the smooth brush. I'll probably go ahead and set up more hotkeys eventually, but I mean, for now, this is more than enough. So I've got a hotkey for centering the view, got a hotkey for moving around and zooming, I've got one for rolling it, I've got one for inverting, so this one inverts it, so like if I've got this on and I do this button, that holds it inverted. I want to set up a Control Z on here, but I've also got this button set up as like a smooth function. So the idea being that, you know, you don't have to keep switching between certain tools using the pen. You want to stay here as much as possible. This one up here I've got for changing the size of the brush, and I've got this one here for picking colours for when I'm painting. So you know, I will say it will take a minute to get used to and remember where you've put all of your shortcuts on the EK remote, but it's worth setting up just because it's a time saver. Okay, so we've almost got the finger to where I mean, I'm kind of happy with it. Just want to make sure, because again, like I said, like these knuckles, like the things I'm doing at the moment is I'm making sure these knuckles are over the top of the finger, so that the bottom's here and the knuckles are over the right side. Like for example, this knuckle was a bit in, and it makes the finger feel wonky. So I pulled this out a little, just to, you know, clarify where we are on the hand. You know, like I don't want it to feel like it's rotated and twisted in any type of weird way. So pretty happy with that. I keep switching to the smooth brush and I don't need to. Okay, that's not bad. Oh. I need to set up a Control Z on my EK remote. It's actually annoying having to come down here or come off, let go and go to the keyboard, so I have to remember to do that. So here again, like this is because the skin's pulling from inside here across the top of the hand. You're gonna see some, so let's just add in some of it now so that we know it's there. This is going to probably be a bit more of a bulge here, and then we'll use the crease tool to, so that's kind of coming across there. There'll be another one coming across up here. And that's because, like, if you look in here, you'll see that all of these creases are going to be pulling around the hand in here. So let's maybe one across the top here. That's come way too far around there. So I mean, I'm just like looking at whatever reference I have available to me and just sort of like doing a tiny bit more blocking just to get some landmarks in that I know I'm going to want to see, right? So I know I'm going to want to see those creases across the hand there, across from the inside of the hand. I know I'm going to want to see them. So we'll just pop them in. So and again, this is only rough landmarking, not absolutely going over the top of this. So here I feel like this is a little all of this is a little saggy here, so I'm going to move that back in. So smoothing on that and sort of like working them areas a little, it's made it feel saggy, like it was like the whole thing didn't have a bone inside the hand, you know what I mean? Like it just felt like it was dripping down into the joint here, you know. So again, like this is like a second stage of maybe I mean, you could just do a better job of it at the start than what I did, but this is like a second stage of like blocking into me to make sure that, you know, everything's where it should be. Okay, so let's start smoothing out this hand, this finger. So it's going to be the same pretty much what we did on there, on this finger. We're going to add some, like, we're going to add the knuckles in so that we know where we are with it. We're going to work on the tip of the finger, sort of fluff some of this out a little so that it's not, you know, going in like a cone. Because although it does get smaller, we've still got like knuckles here that will need to sort of accentuate a little. So let's get the tip of this finger moving in so that we know where we're working to. Again, that's not too bad. Oh. Square there, and again we've now, because we've spent a bit of time smoothing it, it looks like the finger's bent that way, so we'll start moving all of this back over a tiny bit, and it'll give us a chance to thicken out the finger a little, work on the shape a little more, just pull it out to fill out some of the gaps where it's like, it looks like it's sagging a little. We'll probably have the same going on underneath the fingers as what we did with this one. So we'll add a little bit of like just a tiny bit of a sculpting here, just to thicken it up a little. Like the bottom of the finger's not too bad, like down here's not too bad, and here as well. Not bad. Maybe this could be a tiny bit longer. And then I think we'll start sculpting up the knuckle here. Try and close that little tiny gap that we had there. Yeah, there it goes, gone. There was a tiny little hole there that was just bothering me. Okay, let's smooth this over a tiny bit. keeping an eye on the time as well. We've been 16 minutes. That gives us about another 10 minutes of this, and I'll have to reset the camera again. Okay, so I think this is a tiny bit low here. Give it a little crease. Oh, sorry. Let's give it a little crease around the back there to separate the fingers out a tiny bit. I mean, and I think you can see where we're going with this. We'll sculpt up the thumb, and then I might, it depends on how we're doing for time, I might time lapse the last bit of this, because it'll only take a few seconds if I time lapse it, like 10 seconds or something. So just trying to again make sure that we've got all of the forms and the shape where we need it, so that it doesn't look like A doesn't look wonky and B looks like the thing we're trying to sculpt. So I feel like we need to define this line here a little. And maybe, yeah, definitely need to find this line in here a little more. But now we've got this shape here that we need to sort of like make this a bit more, this sort of bends in a little. And that wouldn't really happen. What would happen is the skin would compress, and this would sort of start to push away from the center of the mass, or all of the fat would move away. Because it doesn't want to get crushed or pinched, right? So I'm sorry if I'm talking really quiet as well. I mean, I'm kind of chill. So I hope everybody can hear me all right. I hope this is helpful at the very least. So we've created a bit of an issue for ourselves on the thumb, so this is a good opportunity to use the hide tool. If you tap the screen, you can flip it. So there we go. We've soloed the thumb out a little, so we can actually work on it a bit more easily. And it won't, like, if something's invisible and hidden here, you're not affecting the mesh while it's hidden, which is just really cool. So yeah, this tool here, the hide tool, was a game changer for me when I started sculpting. Like, I was doing things like masking stuff off and trying to just trying to sculpt around things that were in the way, and it was becoming a bit of a nuisance. So somebody in one of the Nomad forums that I'm on told me about that tool, and I absolutely was not mind blown, because I know stuff like that exists, but chuffed, and felt a little silly for just not asking sooner. So my point being here is that, like, I know there are some mean people out there, right? Because I see it a lot on 3D printing forums. So some people are just mean, and I do understand where they're coming from, because some newbie questions that get asked over and over are frustrating. But you've got to remember that people are new. Not everyone's been doing sort of 3D printing or sculpting or any of these types of things as long as other people have. So I try not to get annoyed with newbie questions. And I don't usually, but you know, I get it. I get why some people are annoying about it, but there's still no need to be rude to people. Like like what seems like a silly question to some is like, you know, months and months of trying to figure something out, and then finally having someone tell you that thing, and you go, oh my gosh, I feel so silly. But you know, if everyone's too afraid to ask questions, then you know, no one's ever gonna learn. So I don't personally think there's any such thing as a silly question. There are just stupid answers, a-hole answers, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, don't be an a-hole. You know, if you're doing all right at something, I'm not saying I'm great. I'm just okay, right? This is a hobby to me. But if you're good at something, right, why be an arsehole about it? Especially if people, sorry about the language, I know there are some people that watch with their kids, I'm sorry. Why be a wally about it, right? There's just no need for it. So I always try and be as helpful as I can without being a wally to people. It's a very British thing, being a wally. So anybody that might be watching in America or, I don't know, Brazil, anyone that's watching in Basel or in America, a wally is, I guess, what you guys might call an idiot, a douchebag. This is not looking too bad. What are we at? 23 minutes. I'm going to try and finish this, smoothing some of this out real quick so that it looks like I've got somewhere, and then I'll probably reset that camera unless it switches off in a sec. And we'll actually add some detail to this because this is not looking too bad. I was kind of expecting a bit more, to have to do a bit more work. Sort of blocking this out, but it's not too bad. I think we've done an alright job. This is a bit low. Okay, I think that is fine for now. There's obviously some stuff in here that we could sort out, but I don't think I'm gonna bother because I'll just do that off camera, I guess, and you know, you guys can, you know, the tools that you need to do that. So the hide tool, for example, here, I want to grab this and move this hand, but not have it affect the finger next to it. So just use the hide tool. I mean, this is looking pretty good. I think we'll stop the video there because it's at 24 minutes. We'll start another video, and I'll maybe start adding some detail. We'll sculpt down the finger, maybe work on some of this thumb, and then I might time lapse the rest for the thumbnail, so that we've got a sculpt for the thumbnail. So yeah, I'll go and reset the camera, and we'll be back momentarily, guys. Save that. Yeah, we'll be back. Right, so let's go ahead and sculpt up maybe this part of the hand, and like I said, I'll do the rest as a time lapse. So let's start with the main finger. I still feel like it's bowing that way a tiny bit, so let's up that brush a little. Feels better. Let's go ahead and add some more dynamic topology to this. I want a decent amount of detail now because I'm going to start adding like finer details. So let's go ahead and crank that up. We'll smooth this fingertip out a bit so that we don't. So what happens is that the next strokes that you make on this thing, there'll be the new topology, right? So if, like, as an example, I use the mask tool here, it will mask off the area. It will mask off the area, but it won't smooth it, you know? So what we end up with is new mesh here that hasn't actually been smoothed, right? So let's go over it once quickly with the smooth brush, I reckon, just to you know, just to have that mesh in place, so that you don't get any artifacts or anything like that. So okay, let's draw out a fingernail on here. We're going to do it very similar to what we did with the toenails. In fact, we're going to do exactly the same as what we did with the toenails, but we're not going to do any of that like curling them under or rolling them down forward or anything like that. These are going to be just fingernails on top of the fingers. So the one of the differences being that, like I said, with the toe, they kind of like roll down underneath themselves a little. Not the actual toenails, but the toes themselves roll down. Fingers don't really do that, so we're less worried about that. We just want a nice, clean fingernail shape to work with. So let's just tidy this mask up a tiny bit. We'll flip the mask, and using the widget tool, we're going to do essentially the same as what we did with the toenails. We're going to create that crease there for ourselves. It doesn't have to be as prominent, I don't think. And then we're going to basically do like what we did with the toenails. We're going to drag a little bit of fingernail down so that it kind of pops over the edge. You don't have to do this, it's just a nice touch, I think. And it feels more like a fingernail. Like, obviously, if this was a you want to do long nails, you just keep bringing the nail down, but you'll have to do a bit more tidy up, right? So we've got to worry about this curve here a tiny bit, and that wouldn't be too bad for a female fingernail. Let's do a female fingernail. Let's do female fingers. So you can see that we've now got the shape there that we need, but what's happened is we've got some mess going on under here, so we'll gently rub over this with the smooth brush just to re-add that, you know, mesh with the topology, the dynamic topology. So I'm just adding mesh to it now, like by smoothing it out a little, and then we'll drag it back down into showing. It doesn't look too bad as it is, to be honest. So I think, again, what we'll do, like we did with the toenails, we'll smooth this out a little, because where we yanked this around, we've actually created a bunch of like artifacts around the edges. So we'll smooth that out a little bit. We'll go go to our crease tool, and we'll just push some of this back in to where it was originally, and that doesn't look too bad. You could, okay, so let's do it, because this is really thin, so if you were going to send this to a printer of some sort, it probably wouldn't work. So let's go to the mask tool, we'll go to the settings, under filter here you can set it to front facing vertex only, and that means that it's not going to select the stuff behind, right? So like we can now select this, not worrying that it's selecting any of the mesh behind it. So we can mask this off, and when I flip this, it should. Let's mask off the whole fingernail so we don't have to do any extra work afterwards. So this is now only masking the top half. So if I flip this over, you'll see that nothing underneath is selected. So what we can now do is flip the mask, and we can create a little tiny bit of depth here. So I'll roll that back down so that we've still got our fingernail shape at the end. But we've basically created a tiny bit of depth there, which is just helpful. So now again, if we have our smooth brush selected with dynamic topology still on, we can just gently rub over that, and you can see it gives us that little bit of extra mesh. And now we've got a bit of depth to it. So I mean, I still don't think this is ideal, but you could probably print that and it would be fine. I would probably give it a tiny bit more thickness, maybe. Right, so the fingernail is essentially done. So we're going to go ahead again with the smooth tool. We're going to add that topology that we need to the knuckles, because we're about to do a little bit of work on the knuckles. I'm not too worried about underneath. Like, you could go absolutely bananas with this and, you know, sculpt in fingerprints and palm prints and stuff, but we're gonna sort of hint at it rather than actually go completely bonkers with it and add, you know, actual fingerprints. We'll add a slight skin texture to it. So let's grab the stamp tool. I have this. You can use the scrape thingy at the top there, but I have this, which is like a really harsh wrinkle effect of an alpha that you could. It's probably meant more for you know, sculpting like rhinoceros skin or something, you know. So let's take that to subtraction because we want to carve into this. Smooth over that. Very gently pressing on it. And we've got some creases. If you don't have that, like, you know, if you can't find something that you want to use for these sort of knuckle wrinkles, then just grab the crease tool. Lower down the strength of that a little. Get right in here. And just start carving in some shapes, some lines to suggest knuckle creases. This is a little bit more random, so I prefer this, but you can, like I said, you know, just come in and start jiggling around and adding this sort of effect in here if you want to. We are going to go ahead and use the stamp tool for speed. I'll flip it over as well so it doesn't look the exact same. We'll go over that again and smooth that out. And we'll come up to here. We want to add some of that here as well for this sort of crease in the knuckles here. And we'll come down this side a little. And we'll smooth that over. So again, we're not looking for like harsh gouges into it, because if you look at your knuckles, I don't know if you can see it on the camera there, but there are creases that are always in the knuckle, right? So even if it's stretched out, even around here, there'll be smaller creases because there's like this under tension, but they'll still be there, right? And I think that with the stamp tool again, if I was going to add like skin texture to this, I do have some alphas for it. So again, just find a skin alpha that works for you. Really lower down the intensity, because we really only want it to like just sort of like, again, hint at it, because we're going to smooth over it. And then maybe I've got it set to subtract, so I don't know how well you can see that on the camera, but on the actual screen you'll be able to see it fine. So we're literally just adding like texture to it at this point. It's the same way I did the Ninja Turtle. It's the same way I did I will be doing the skin on Chun-Li. Like once this is done as well, I'll probably decimate, because I don't want to lose too much of the texture that I've put on it, but I don't want to like have a crazy detailed model for like an entire sculpt, right? So you'll see, like when I do put up the time lapse of Chun-Li, you'll see what I mean. But I've essentially done this, what I'm doing here, but decimated it just to reduce the amount, the actual number of polygons in the scene, because it is kind of intense. So there is essentially how I would do a go ahead and handle a sculpt. I might, with the brush size a little smaller. So when you flatten out your hand, you've got some real like severe creasing around these edges of the knuckles here. So I might add some of that real quick. Kind of pushes that knuckle out a little, which I kind of like that. Have a little look. Yeah, I mean everybody's knuckles are different. Mine are quite like, I've got like a callus type thing here, which is creating a different shape, but you get the idea. I mean, you can do it a little down here as well. I wouldn't push it too far on the lower ones because it makes you look like you've got like gorilla knuckles. But you know, you can just add a bit more of that in there. Like this one up here seems a bit more. Like a tiny bit like over the top of the knee, you know, like almost like a shroud. And then yeah, I don't know if we need to do too much with the knuckle, this knuckle here, but there it is essentially. So I think what we'll do, yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll time lapse the rest of this, because that is all of the tools you need to sculpt a hand. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and cut that camera off in a sec. Try to have a look around it a bit more. So again, let's take a look at the wireframe. See, this is going to be too high realistically for like a sculpture, because this is one hand, right? And once we've finished with this hand is probably going to be like close to maybe 500,000 or more polys, or edges, or whatever you want to call it, right? So I think what you can do is, with the smooth brush selected, turn the intensity all the way down so it's 0 intensity, and what that's going to do is it's only going to affect the topology and not the actual sculpt. And then we'll reduce this a tiny bit, maybe down to like 320, and we'll just see what we get up the brush. And you can see it's basically doing what a decimation does. I'm very gently pressing over where I've put all of this skin texture, and it still leaves a suggestion of it, but if you look at the difference between the two, it's not an awful lot, but it's something, right? So this is way more intense down here, and if you look up here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the number's going down when we sculpt over these areas that we've done. So overall the sculpt is going to go up, but then it gets to parts like this where you've added all that skin texture, you've reduced it, but you've managed to keep some of that there. So from even here, which is kind of close, that still looks good. So just a quick tip, I guess, to you know, keep your files that you save as much file space as you can, and space on the disk, right? So that's just one tip. And what that also does is it leaves you in control over like how much of this you want to keep up here, right? So I've smoothed all the way over that, But if you've got much more fine details here, you can selectively go around here where all the skin texture is and leave this at a higher resolution. With a decimate, it does the whole model. Now decimate does do a good job, but it does not discriminate any part of the model, right? So your fingernails, you might decimate that. Overall the model looks nice, and you might decimate the fingernails just that tiny bit too much, and then you'll have to come back in and resculpt it. But you know, doing it this way, smooth brush on, intensity down, and turn down the dynamic topology just a tiny bit so that you don't lose too much detail. I mean, you can push it further, let's try it, but I don't know how much it will keep. I mean, it's still keeping some. It's still kept some, so it's not bad, but again, you move further back, you know, and it looks fine. Then when you get closer, you can see it, what's going on. Whereas, you know, with it just that slightly bit higher, yeah, you can see it there on the wireframe, how much we've taken off of it. But with it that slightly bit higher, it's a much nicer sculpt to look at. You know, it really depends on what you're working with, what your aim is with the sculpt, and you know what your hardware can handle, right? So even my PC is not amazing. It's like a 3060, 16 gigs of RAM. It just does okay. But because I don't do any intense rendering or anything like that, it does me fine. Mostly what we do on it is animation and sculpting in here. So anyway, excuse me, we'll switch that off. We'll go to a time lapse, and I'll talk some more at the end of the video. Okay, and there we have it, guys. Finished hand sculpture. I tried to simplify it and break it down as much as I could for you. It's obviously going to take a bit of practice and time, but yeah, there it is. Finished hand sculpt. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If there's anything else you want me to do, if there's anything else you'd like to see me sculpt, or anything you'd like me to break down, then leave it in the comments and I'll do my best. I think that will probably do. So yeah, thank everybody for joining me. Thank you for the support so far. Subscribe so I can buy a 3D printer, and yeah, I'll catch you all in the next one. Happy sculpting, everybody.